Good evening, folks. My name's Beth. I welcome you here to the Ann Arbor District Library for this discussion, Cultivating Sovereignty, Black Farmers in Washtenaw County. Without further ado, I'm going to first introduce Kathy Muha from the Universalist Church, and she'll explain their program and introduce the panel. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Beth. She actually did pronounce my last name correctly, which... Oh, is it even on? Hello? Oh, okay, there we go. Anyway, what I just said wasn't that important. So my name's Kathy Muha. I'm the co-chair of the food justice team at the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. And we're the co-hosts of this event. And I'd first like to read to you our mission statement. The food justice team advocates for human health and animal welfare while promoting equitable food systems that sustain the environment, alleviate hunger, and support farm and food workers. I'm going to pass around, we have other events coming up at some point. One might be a movie called Eating for Tomorrow, which is how what we choose to eat affects the environment and so on. And excuse me, that will probably be at the downtown library maybe on April 22nd. One of the reasons it's up in the air is I was waiting to find out if we had permission to show the movie, so we're looking into that. But anyway, so I have a clipboard. If you would like to sign up to know about future events that we're going to do, you please do so. And so thank you so much for coming. This is going to be very exciting. We have Alex Ball down at the end. We have Julius Buzzard here, and we have Melvin Parsons in the middle. I am going to be filling in for Claire Austin because she was not able to come here. She answered some questions, and I printed out the answers. So I'm not Claire, but I'm going to be sort of answering for her. So Julius is going to be our facilitator and moderator. So,
hi everybody. Thanks again for coming. My name, I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit. Kathy contacted me about being a part of this, and as we were playing it out, I was like, I'm not really a farmer, but I know a lot of farmers. And so there's some of the questions that I might provide a little bit of context to from my own perspective, but primarily going to be hearing from Melvin, Alex, and Claire via Kathy. But first, I'll start with just a little bit about myself so you know who I am and why I'm here. Excuse me. And have Melvin and Alex do the same. So my name is Julius Buzzard. I use the he, sweet, he, him pronouns. I'm the executive director at an organization in Ypsilanti called Growing Hope. I'm very open about what's happening in my head. And I thought I should probably not say this before I start talking, and I think I have to, or I'm just going to keep thinking about it. So if you know me, you know that me and caffeine doesn't mix great. And I had a coffee an hour ago. So my brain is just trying to catch up. If I start talking too quickly, just somebody raise your hand and be like, you slow down, Julius. Thanks. So I'm the executive director at Growing Hope in Ypsilanti. We're a food systems and food sovereignty organization. And usually what I tell people about the work that we do at a very basic level is we hope to usher folks in and bring people into closer relationship with food and the food system through a lens of equity. So whether that means they're growing the food, eating the food, producing the food, purchasing the food, whatever you do with food, we want to be a part of strengthening that relationship. I sure can. So to that end, we've got several different programs. We steward the farmers markets in Ypsilanti, we do a lot of support for home gardeners and for farmers in various ways. We have a shared use incubator kitchen and youth programming that has been around for quite some time. I've been at Growing Hope for about 4 years. I garden myself. I grew up on a farm, so I've been a part of this sort of world in various ways throughout my entire life, and I'm happy to be here and continue to be in spaces where I get to do a little bit more of the advocacy and education part around farming and gardening and supporting our local food system. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Melvin, just because he is right next to me, and I'm going to wrap your introduction into our first question, which is, just tell us about yourself. How did you share about your journey of how you got into farming? What drew you into this work?
Good evening, everyone. I am Melvin Parson.
Same for you.
Same for me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? She cannot. Should we try to turn? Is there a volume that can be turned up? You got it. All right. How's this? All right. Fantastic. I am Melvin Parson, and yeah, I'm kind of like Julius, like stuff that goes, a lot of stuff goes through my head, and so I need to say it, otherwise it takes up more space than it should. And so, yeah, I'm Melvin Parson, and my prison number is 184741. And as a result of having spent 13 years of my life off and on, in and out of jails and prisons, it's part of what drives me and some of the decisions that I make, some of the decisions that I have made as it relates to founding a nonprofit organization called We the People Opportunity Farm, where our mission is to break the cycle of incarceration here in Washtenaw County. And yeah, so I feel like, yeah, I'm a lot of things, right? Like I'm a grandfather, and I'm a father, and I'm a friend, and I'm a community member, and I'm fallible, and I make mistakes, and I have some successes along the way, and I stand on the shoulders of a whole lot of men and women who I've met on this incredible journey, right? Including Kathy. And so, yeah, so I'm not a, yeah, Alex is the real farmer, right? You know, I'm not, in 2015, I couldn't even spell vegetable, you know, like, I don't know how this whole thing happened. But part of what We the People Opportunity Farm has evolved into is a place of healing and transformation and a safe space for people who have been systems impacted, like myself. We have a paid internship program for formerly incarcerated men and women where they come, every year we get a new cohort of folks, and we pay them $21 an hour to be with us about 16 to 20 hours a week. And part of that's out at our farm growing some amazing produce, which winds up on the shelves of Argus Farm Stop, Zingerman's Roadhouse, Zingerman's Deli, a few other places in Ann Arbor, and some restaurants in Ypsilanti, including the Ypsi Co-op. So part of that work that they do is out at the farm, but they also participate in some other soil amending components that we would like to think we have, which is financial literacy, social emotional learning workshops, compassionate communication workshops. Last year we added horse wellness therapy to their experience. And so with that being said, last year we had a strategic visioning retreat, and one of the things that came out of that was to focus or double down on our efforts to build maximum support for the folks that we serve. And another thing that came out of it was the creation of a social enterprise, which we're embarking on now. And so we're planning our first social enterprise, which will be in the form of a cafe called Good Soil Cafe. We have a Facebook page. Please go there and like our page. And it will be ran by and ultimately managed by formerly incarcerated men and women. Yeah, and like Julius mentioned, I'm excited to be in these spaces and talk about our work and to be sitting here on this panel with two amazing African-American men.
Thanks, Mel. That's awesome, man. It's funny. You told a story one time at a conference, and I don't know if you remember this. You talked about days when you're out working in the fields. You know, it's hot, and a breeze comes in. You talked about standing up and feeling that breeze, taking full advantage of it, because those came before me didn't always have the opportunity to stand up and enjoy that breeze. And I think about that all the time. And when I'm at work and having a hard day and things are going rough, I'm like, man, I stand up a little bit, let that cold air hit me in the back. I'm like, man, how lucky I am to have a little break. And I have to spend my whole life bent over working for somebody else. So I'm very thankful. My name is Alex Ball. I own Old City Acres. We are a year-round vegetable farm in CSA, which means community-supported agriculture. Basically, is we do year-round boxes of produce that we deliver to people in Ypsilanti community. We have about 200 families or so that we work with currently. The farm right now is, I think we're on our 13th season of production. So we've been around for a decent amount of time. I said we're a year-round operation, so we use hoop houses and greenhouses to grow greens, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, all that kind of stuff. But the real cool part of our business is that we partner with local farms and local growers and producers to aggregate and then redistribute that to other through our bots program. So we have like 20 plus people we work with, farms from Ypsilanti and Arbor, and even far out to the west side of the state that we aggregate produce from and then redistribute in town. So we're really working hard to not only get our product out there, but have a place for other farmers to sell their product. One thing I learned really early on, especially in farming, and the real mentality is get big or get out. That's really what the game is. And what would happen is that these small growers would invest in, let's say, a business or whatever. Let's say they start selling product to somebody, but then the minute that business gets too big, they just drop the farm out and move on to somebody else. And that happens over and over. It's a nasty cycle. And it's something I kept getting caught up in. You know, I kept over-investing in other people's businesses just to get pushed out when you can't grow as fast as they can because of lack of capital. So I really tried to create a system that not only sold food off my farm, but was an outlet for other smaller growers to sell product on their farm, right? If you want to sell 2 pallets of potatoes, you can take that anywhere. But if you need to sell, let's say, 3 or 4 boxes, you're much more limited on who you can work with. And what I found really early on is that because we built a system that was a farmer first, in a sense, that these producers, when they grow, they not only do they grow with you, but the price of product comes down because you've invested in them. Now they want to invest into you. So we have a few people we work with that we're their main outlet for their product, but because of that, we buy out everything they have. So we now allow them to do what they do best, which is grow food, tap maple syrup trees, or grow apples, because they're not having to worry about that as much. So what we really did was take the experiences, the things that we felt were shortcomings in the local food community, opportunity that wasn't there, and then been trying to take the opportunity and extend it to everybody around us. So that's really been my work the last few years, is building out the infrastructure to manage that. Because it sounds simple. Say, I'll get some produce, I'll redistribute it, and we'll move on. But you have to think about all the back-end storage, all the infrastructure, the back end, the walk-in coolers, the box trucks, all that infrastructure in the back end doesn't really make you more money in a second, but it's needed in order to scale. And like many farmers, especially farmers of color, access to capital and lack of capital is a major issue. So if you're really trying to scale a food business, and what folks don't tell you is that not only is starting a farm extremely expensive and out of reach for most people, but then scaling it to the point where you can actually try to make some money or even a living is not impossible, but the failure rates of farms is insanely high. I'm in my 13th season now, and a majority of the farms I started with they're not farming anymore, and the ones that still are big names who you all know of, right? They were all come up in the same time period. Your Green Things, your Sealy, those they were the ones who made it out. But beyond them, there are probably 20, 30 people I know who are no longer able to be in the game, and especially post-COVID. COVID was an opportunity for farmers to sell more product, but really what I saw locally was a real consolidation of the market, which means the market is harder to get into, it's harder to sell products into. So we're really at a turning point in time where we have to make decisions and say, are we going to invest in these local farms, are we going to grow this network, or are we going to put more money into bringing more products outside, or we don't steal these businesses and work on them. So if we don't work on it now, we don't continue to scale it, you continue to see more and more consolidation, more farms shutting down, more farmland taken away. So I tell people all the time that if this is something you care about, if you say, I care about local farms, then you have to go and vote with your dollar. That's the only way you're going to keep them around. If you say, I care about this issue and then move on and don't do anything, that's fine, but you don't really, it's okay. I think I don't care about, I don't put money into. But really in our society, if you don't spend your dollar, it doesn't really matter. So, you should grow your own food, you should do all that. That's important, that's smart, but you really have to then reach out to the farmer community and really invest in those businesses if you want them to be there in the long term. So I've talked enough, Julie, so I'll throw this back to you now. Sorry.
Hello? Okay, it's working. So I'm going to answer for Claire. She says, I grew up homesteading. My mother always had a huge garden that fed us all summer with enough left to store for winter. As we moved around, we didn't always have space for large gardens, but I always kept growing something because I love plants. What truly drew me into farming, though, was a deep need to reconnect with the land, with myself, and with a way of living that feels balanced. Yes, farming can be an economic opportunity, but for me, it's a way to give back, to be in relationship with the earth, and to support the ecosystem that supports us all.
Well, thank you all for sharing. I will add a little bit of context for Claire. Claire also works with me at Growing Hope. She's our farmers market manager. She and her sister Amanda run a farm in Detroit called Finnegan's Farms. And they do some just like phenomenal work supporting other growers. On wheels, supporting other growers in Detroit in the southeast Michigan area. You're the only one who's going to know this because you know all the questions. I'm going to probably skip and combine some so we make sure we have time for questions from the audience. So the next question is. It's about food sovereignty. So we talk about food sovereignty. It's more than just about growing food. It's about the power, agency, and legacy that it builds. Can you share some examples or share an example of how you see your farm or the work that you do contributing to that vision within the community? Or some ways that you've unexpectedly seen farming build connections among people? And I will just go ahead and provide an answer. You all can think about it, since I knew the questions ahead of time. Thinking about food sovereignty, I started off talking about how, Growing Hope, we're a food sovereignty and food systems organization. And very much not just about growing food. We do have a 1.5 acre farm downtown, or just outside of downtown Ypsilanti, where I can say we grow some of the, if not the best, produce in the city limits, because there's not that many people growing produce in the city limits, but it is also really great. Our farmer does a phenomenal job. But the work that we do, I think, so our farmer, his name is Christopher, and just last week he was holding a workshop on soil blocking. And if you happen to be listening to NPR on your way here today, you may have heard his voice. Because we had a reporter who heard about the workshop and wanted to learn more about soil blocking themselves, so they came by and participated. And I think in reflecting, both in talking with him and with our interns and folks who were there, and also listening to it and reading through some of the interview questions, if you don't know what soil blocking is, it's a way of starting seedlings that uses little to no plastic. So you pack the soil really tightly together, and that becomes where their seed is at, and you plant it directly from there. And there were just a number of people who were at this workshop about soil blocking, the very beginning phase of growing your own food. And every single one of them talked about how they were at this thing. You know, part of it is like our like the world and wanting to support local and being involved in growing your own food. But they're just like, each one of them highlighted, like, it is so important that we are touching the food, getting our hands in the soil. It's so important that we are a part of nourishing ourselves and nourishing our communities. And I think that's the part of the work that it's like why I enjoy getting to work with our community in the capacity that we do, and why we're all about, supporting folks by giving folks the tools, resources, and knowledge to interact with food in the food system. Again, ushering folks into closer relationship with food. For some people, that is growing their own food. And oftentimes when people are growing their own food, they're also growing food for other people. For some people that, not everybody can or wants to have their hands in the dirt, great, I'm going to send you to Alex, probably 9 times out of 10, because he can get you whatever you want. Some people don't even want to do that. Great, go to Argus, where Tess works, where you can buy produce that Melvin and his team has grown. Just seeing folks enter closer into the food and the food system in ways that provides community level of care.
Thanks, Julius. So you start thinking about the way I see food sovereignty. There's this idea of, have you heard before called zones of agriculture, right? There's like zones 1, 2, and 3. Zone 1 is in cities, 2 is like peri-urban, and 3 is in a rural space, right? So the more that you take, let's say, a food business, and you start interacting with those in different zones, and start bringing that product closer to the city, it really allows 2 things. One, it allows you to specialize, which is what you need in order to feed people, in order to scale. But what you really need is that relationships, is that ability to connect with people. And when you can create some level of solidarity within that food system, then the system itself becomes so much stronger. I'll give you an example of that directly, where it's a level of economic solidarity where vendors I worked with, farmers who are, the vendors we worked with, they're my friends, right? They're farmer friends. And not only are they people who I buy from and I buy from them, but when they need help with something on their greenhouses, we show up. We go there. My friends down in Milan had a huge windstorm. We went down there and tore down 2 greenhouses and rebuilt them in an afternoon. And it wasn't because they owed me money and they didn't pay me after that, but I know that this summer I'm going to buy their tomatoes. I'm going to be purchasing their product later in the summer, and I want to buy from them. And how they succeed affects how I succeed. And one way we see it too is that when you can really, find some solidarity in your work and your community or whatever it be, it creates a level of leeway in the sense of like, I have farmers who owe me money, and I have farmers who I owe money to. And I've loaned out thousands and thousands of dollars. I'll sell something and say, okay, well, this $10,000, pay me back over the season, right? No interest, because again, if you have this product, you have the greenhouses, then you can grow more food, you can sell it to me, then together we can all make money, right? So it's all about, in my head, is building those connections, those ties together. And that's really the hard part, especially as Black producers. We're very concentrated historically, and that's what now pretty in urban spaces, right? Especially as there's always some level of hostility in rural spaces. So in order to really create that strong system, you have to have people who you connect with at all levels of that, right? You have people in the city who are doing amazing work, talking to people, know what's going on there. You need to have farmers outside the city helping to feed them, and then you need to have people past that, you're growing more food. So really just being able to create those connections with people, man, really gives you a lot of control over your food system. Julius asked this earlier, and I unfortunately didn't answer it. Like, how did you get into this, into growing food or caring about food? So the hometown where my parents are from had one grocery store in Romulus. There's one store in downtown. If those don't know, it's an auto town, all factories. In 2008, when the recession hit, everything in town got rattled. Everything shut down immediately. Just everyone got laid off, right? So the store that I would go and shop at was now gone, closed. I didn't have a car. I was 14, 15 years old. And for the first time in my life, I started thinking about where food came from, right? I always assumed it just came to the store. I never even though I grew up around farms, I never even thought about farms growing food, right? It's work. It's nothing more than that. So seeing the actual result of that business close down triggered in my mind the initial reaction of, okay, we have to get control of my own food intake on some level, but also really kind of exposed me to the effects of other people's choices on my food access, right? So we were 100% dependent on whoever owned this business to stay in town and make this work. And not saying they were from out of town or in town, whatever it is, but like I've been in this area for 3 generations, and I'd rather die before I let that local food access stop, right? So there's a level of commitment that comes with, I think, local food and people involved in these things. Like, an unfortunate side effect is that, growing food is there's really no money in it. It's a commodity that you can get anywhere. No one's starving because of lack of food production or lack of food access, the difference. So being able to at a young age understand that, like, if we don't have control of these systems or have our foot in the door or have a voice at the table, then when the time comes to get cut, you're going to be the first one to get cut, as we see currently. When you become waste pretty quickly. So really seeing that loss early on really locked in my head. Okay, the only way through this is some type of community system where it's reciprocal. Like I said, I have folks who I owe money to right now and folks who owe me money, and we're like, oh, over the next 9 months, we'll settle that up. Over some period, we'll settle that up. And having that control and having that community over there, I think, is really the only way, as a community or as a marginalized community, you can really push through.
I appreciate both Alex and Julius's perspective on food sovereignty. Our organization isn't really focused on food sovereignty, but I knew early on that either you've got a seat at the table or it's your ass that's on the menu. Like, I got that early on in this journey that I've been on. And I got other messages. When I first started putting my hands in the soil, it was being done for very selfish reasons. I did it because of what it did for my head. It quieted the noise down inside of my head, and it made me feel a little bit more grounded. And based upon my lived experience as having been systems impacted, spent all those years in and out of institutions, I thought to myself, like, how can I? Not necessarily, for me, it wasn't about the creation of the food sovereignty piece. It was about the creation of bringing some folks along that could potentially have the same experience that I was having, but food being the vehicle in which to do that. And so that's kind of like been my drive in relation to food sovereignty. And also, I've shared this story a few times, just in terms of community connections and fresh food. I remember being out there at the farm, and this was early on before we became a nonprofit organization, and I'd be out there by myself, and I'm sweating bullets, and I'm out there 80 hours a week, just trying to figure this thing out. And there were some kids that would climb over the fence, and there's a basketball court out there where our farm is, because we rent some land from a church. And they would climb the fence, and they would go over there and play basketball. And we, over time, they would speak to me, and I would speak to them. And then one day I was out there, and a couple of kids climbed over the fence, and I think one was 11. I think they were like 11 and 9 or something like that. And one of the kids say to me, "Hey, Farmer Parson, have you ever been to jail?" Like, what a question to ask, right? But and I was like, yes, finally, we're about to have some real conversations here. And so I said, yeah, I've been to jail. And so the kid's response was like, it was almost like a, ooh, wow, what happened? That kind of thing there, right? Because that's their experience. Like, they, not necessarily that they've been to jail, but I'm sure a member or some members, probably even their dad or their mom or their uncle or their aunt or, some. And so they're trying to, I knew early on that what they were trying to do was somehow normalize this. You know, and so my response to that was, well, it doesn't matter what I've been to jail for. What matters is that we figure out a way to make sure that you never go to jail, right? That kind of thing. And I told him also, what also matters is that given the opportunities that you have or the lack of opportunities that you have, you try your best to make the best out of it and to be kind to yourself and to be kind to others. And the third most important thing out of this conversation is that whenever you see Farmer Parsons over here, you make sure you stop by and ask me if I need some help, right? You know, so that was my tie-in to kind of like food and what that represents in a sovereign sort of way. And I've got a host of other stories, but I'll stop right there.
So, excuse me, I'm going to answer for Claire. Claire says, at Finnegan's Farm, we specifically work to build community and resilience. Our core mission is to change the way people think about food access. It's not just about making food available. It's about creating permanent, sustainable options for anyone who wants to grow. Through this work, we've developed an Afro-futuristic approach that weaves together Black and indigenous land stewardship, agrotechnology, art, and ancestral knowledge into a model for more sustainable futures.
Thank you. The next question is, I'm deciding which one to go with a little bit. Can you share a moment where you felt some form of resistance, whether from an institution, a policy, or just public perception? And what helped you push through? As you think. I think I'll give sort of a general piece, something that I hear often from folks that we're working with. So we do a lot of support with urban gardening, backyard gardening, small farms, supports types of things. And I was a little hesitant with this one. I don't want to go into like the current political landscape right now. But often, I can say this from my own experience too. You know, like I mentioned, I grew up on farmland, a couple hours north of here, in Bay City, and I ran as far away from that as I could. I wanted to, and I still want to live in the city. I now have a family who doesn't want to live downtown in a major city, so we've compromised a little bit with Ypsilanti for the time being. But I just had a really negative, I personally had my own negative perception of farming, of like working on the land. I felt from myself, and I think I heard it some from others, but like it felt like it was tying me back to slavery, back to like, the experiences of my ancestors. And had this personal feeling of like they have to have gotten through that so I could do something different. Come full circle, and now I work in an organization where our hands are in the dirt every single day. And I truly believe there are like nourishing, healing practices and qualities of having our hands in the dirt that tie us into and help us commune with ourselves, help us commune with our community, but also help us commune with the ancestors. I think that is a mantle. That's a story that I've heard from a number of people, and I know it personally from myself, of feeling like it is not, like we shouldn't be a part of it. And it's a hard thing to get around because I think for a lot of people it is primarily internal. a lot of folks who I've had conversations with, myself included, was primarily an internal narrative and an internal feeling that comes from, years, decades plus of the history of our people. And I think hopefully I've answered my own question. I think I got into it myself so much, but that is a barrier that I have experienced and felt. It's also a barrier, like I said, that I've heard other people talk about. But I think that there's just so much healing in nature for anybody, regardless of who they are, where they come from, of being back in relationship with the land. Do you want to go next, since you have a written response?
Okay. So Claire says, land access is still a huge issue. In Detroit, urban farming is thriving, and there's more access to vacant lots. But in Washtenaw County, the barriers are much steeper. Land is expensive, and generational wealth has historically been denied to Black and brown communities. The cost of getting started is another major hurdle. Farming requires upfront investment, land, equipment, seeds, infrastructure, etc., all while operating on razor-thin margins. It's not something you can just jump into. For me, I feel we need a community investment, not just individual effort.
So for me, or for us as a nonprofit organization, I personally haven't experienced any obstacles or resistance, really. Like for me, 2015, I was down at the farmers market in Carytown. Really robust farmers market, and was down there trying to figure out what kale was, and like the heavens opened up, and it felt like the heavens opened up and yelled down to me and said, "Hey, Melvin, this is where I want you to sit at," and I thought that meant that I was going to have a booth at the Carytown farmers market. I still don't have a booth at that farmers market. So for me, it's been a very magical ride and a very magical experience, and haven't had a lot of obstacles and a lot of resistance. And I think that's probably because, like, we're a nonprofit organization, so we're able to, with the support and funding of other folks and institutions, we're able to meet those margins and have the funding to do some of the impactful and meaningful things we're able to do. And then for me, I think early on, like, ignorance is bliss, right? So I didn't know, and so, but I have had this experience that made me understand my space in this arena on a more personal, cultural level. One day I was out at the farm. Again, this was, by myself days, and it was hot. It was like, geez, OP, it was like 90-something degrees, and it's 2 o'clock, and and I'm out there, and there wasn't any, I'm not in the sun, in the shade, and I'm working, and I swear, I looked out into the farm, and in my mind's eye, I could see this young Black woman laying out there in the fields in some plantation in the South, on her back, getting ready to bear a child, and the doula helped her with the delivery and swept the child away, and minutes later she was forced to get up and go back to her task, picking cotton, right? Like, I could see this in my mind's eye out at my farm. Like, it was like I transported to some plantation in the South. I had no experience about this whatsoever. And in that same vision, I saw this strong Black male being emasculated in front of his family and in front of his village, and all because he was thirsty. You know, he was in this same location. It's hot outside, and somewhere in the South at this plantation. And the plantation owner is sitting there in the shade with cold water and cold lemonade. And he told this strong black man, if you get on your knees and crawl over here, I'll give you a cup of water, boy. And I watched in my mind's eye the strong black man get on his knees and crawl over there to get that cup of water. And that plantation owner took the cup and poured it out on the ground, right? And so I don't know why I saw this, but it made me understand that this thing that I was doing, this thing that I was part of, was a little bit deeper than I thought it was, right? Like it really wasn't all about me, and that I'm just a vessel of something, of some things, and that it's just my job just to keep moving forward.
That's beautiful, Melvin. I appreciate that. That's beautiful. I've been kind of dreading this question all day, because if I sit down here and I'm honest with you, we talked about the times I owned farmland, about the gun violence went through. It's the amount of times I've had people come to my farm, call me a slur and threaten me with gun violence. It creates this atmosphere where all you want to do is feed your community. And you tell yourself that if I do the right thing, if I take to myself, I work hard, I pay my bills, whatever, people will leave you alone, that you can exist. But the reality is that your existence is an insult to a lot of people. And at this time, you know, I'm a landowner. I thought that we're at some level of business owner, landowner, doing the right thing, that you can reach across that aisle and work with certain people. And my time owning land, my time farming has really soured my attitude and really soured my ability to work in certain spaces, to a point now where I talk to farmers all the time, and I can't with a straight face tell someone they should go into a deeply rural space and buy land and try to feed their community. Because the stories of gun violence, the stories of theft, the stories of being a target for when someone has a bad day, it really creates a situation where you take, I can sit here and talk to you about an hour about how many times we've moved farms, how much money is taken to do all this. Like, that's fine. You can deal with that. But when you have to, on top of that, worry about your life being threatened, when you're just trying to harvest some broccoli, right? It really puts you in a situation where, look at Washtenaw County, or the farmers are disappearing everywhere, but you just see black farmers disappearing at a higher rate, because like they're not growing food, they're surviving. You know, it creates this environment where not only are you pushed into certain spaces that are not great for agriculture, it just it makes it, if you really want to succeed, if you really want to, let's say, build long-term equity and go these places that you think you should have a right to be in. I'll give you an example. The land I was farming in, the place where I was at, my uncle lived down the street. My dad used to live there. I spent some of my childhood out there. It's one of the last black land areas in the south of Michigan. And I went there because I thought I'd be safe. I thought that this is a community of people who I can be safe with. And I quickly realized that the town was full of people who just hated each other, right? It's generations of just a hatred, and generations of people resentment that you're even existing in these spaces. So yeah, I talked to my other farmers, friends who are farmers who are white, and I tell them about this gun violence, and they're blown away. They're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean this is happening? And they said, well, you just do this. You just stand up and do this. It's like when you're surrounded with people with weapons, and you're the only one out there. It's easy to say, be brave, but the minute someone got a gun on you, things change real quick. It's funny, I tell people all the time. So our farm is in Ypsilanti Township. We're a mile and a half from downtown, and I get a lot of ignorant people who like to assume things, like to say rude things, urban spaces. And I have to tell them, I'm like, man, I've dealt with more gun violence and more hatred I have on a street with 10 people than I have in a crowd of 200. So we're at a point now where we have to claim spaces, we have to be in those spaces, because we have a right to be in rural spaces, we have a right to have access to land to feed our communities. That's true. But it's at a point where it's such a risk. And if you take the risk of farming, the risk of, let's say, dealing with economic issues, risk of weather, and then on top of that, now you're just dealing with the risk of violence towards you, it really diminishes your ability to do the other three. So I think, all farmers are dealing with land access, all farmers are dealing with access to capital, all of those things. But when you own land and you have a business and you're feeding people, on some level that's power, right? It's generational wealth, it's controlling something. And there are a lot of people out there who don't want you to have any power. And even if you have less than them, the idea that you have something is it's too much. So yeah, the boundaries are not just the $250,000 I've invested to scale this business and grow and stay in the game. The real risk is just like staying alive. And it's unfortunate that has to be the issue that has to be the issue, right?
Thank you all. Yeah, I knew that was a bit of a heavier question, and I want to acknowledge that. But it is the reality that we're living and working in every single day. So hold on to that. We'll come back to it. I'm not going to tie it in a neat bow, but we will come back to it. Part of the, a thing that has brought us together very early on. So I've been at Growing Hope 4 years. We the People's been, what, 5.5, 6 years?
Yeah, the nonprofit's been about 5.5, 6 years.
6 years, and Alex has been doing this for a very long time, but officially for 13 years. About 5 years ago, a thing that came out of a conversation similar to this one was the Washtenaw County Black Farmers Fund. There's also one in Detroit, the Detroit Black Farmers Land Fund. Maybe they changed their name. There's one on the west side of the state as well, which is a BIPOC fund, so a little bit more broad. And with this next question, looking at like those supportive type actions, movements that are happening, and the things that are yet to have happened. If we're sitting here in 5 to 10 years from now, what does success look like? What do you hope has changed for Black farmers in this region as a whole? And I'll start with a little bit of context for our county. Washtenaw County is great for farmers. We have so many ways that support farmers, small farms. We have farm stops. We have farmers markets. We have food hubs. We have lots of things, and we are a place, if not that has had the greatest growth in small farms since our last farm census. We're very high up there. At the same time, we have very few Black farmers in our county. In fact, it's gone down from census to census. So there's currently 14 Black farmers in Washtenaw County, the county in the state that has the highest growing number of small farms. And so to me, success looks like I know every single person's name who is on that list, and we are 5 times that. That feels like a minimum to me. With the number of farms that are in our space, to me, success looks like they're like the land access piece. The Washtenaw County Black Farmers Fund. We raised over $100,000. We supported some really great farmers doing some phenomenal work. None of them purchased land, just to be frank and honest, because $100,000 is like a down payment on land in Washtenaw County, maybe. So there's still like addressing the land access piece, which I think needs to be done in a different way. I think like supporting like the farm co-op collective model, or like the farm land trust model, where there is land for people to grow, to learn, to build, so that they're not going into it and putting everything that they own into a piece of land when they don't necessarily know if that is like actually what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Yeah, I think it goes beyond just raising money and giving people money, but you know, at the heart of it, I think what we wanted to do with the Black Farmers Fund, you know, some of it's like retroactive and thinking about how we have restorative practices within our country, but we want people to have an opportunity. And sometimes that means an opportunity to fail and to be able to get up and move on to the thing that we're actually, you know, passionate, good at, want to spend our time doing. And sometimes that means being able to have the opportunity to succeed and to grow. And it's like, not that that means it's going to be easy. Farming's never going to be easy. I don't know, maybe if there's like an AI robot that can do it for us. But, you know, nobody's farming because it's easy. Nobody's necessary, and I'd also say very few people are farming to try and, if anybody, to try and get rich. But everybody should have the opportunity to be a part of this work, to be a part of nourishing our communities, and to feel safe.
We're talking about the future? Oh, yeah, okay. 5 to 10 years from now. So Claire says, I think success looks like a thriving, sustainable, growing community, a network where Black growers have not only the resources to get started, but also the outlets to share and profit from their work, a system created by us, sustained by us, and continued by us.
I'll just say quickly, success looks like, when I think about that, because I haven't thought about that question much until just now, and just listening to the answers makes me think very briefly that success looks like 5 years from now when we have this same panel of folks. And 5 years from now, I'll still look the same. I won't look 5 years older. Is that we'll be talking about the successes that we've had, and we'll be talking about the opportunities that have become available to make growers, present growers, like my dear friend Alex, feel safe in this growing space, and for my dear friend Julius to realize times 10 what he described food sovereignty to be, and for myself and for We the People Opportunity Farm to have a space where we're growing food on 5 acres of land, and we've got 20 men and women coming through our paid internship program, and we're working in collaborative efforts with local other farmers and farmers from across the country, across county, and intercultural, right? You know, like where we 5 years from now, we somehow find a way to work together for the greater good of our food system.
Yeah, so in the next 5 to 10 years, I want to just kind of soundboard off what Julia said, is that there has to be opportunity to fail. And that's really what's missing right now. There's nowhere where farmers can go, try and grow food, try and sell food, have access to infrastructure like a walk-in cooler, a hoop house, things like that, without having to like sink their entire life savings into trying to farm. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I spent the price of a small home trying to farm, between land, trucks, building. It takes a lot of capital, and I've known since I was 18 I wanted to be a farmer, and I've put everything I can towards that. But it shouldn't take that in order to try and feed your community, or at least, had the opportunity to fail, try something, and then if it's something you like, sure, then double down, invest everything you have into it, and go for it. But at this point now, even we don't know if we even have good farmers or bad farmers because there's no opportunity to even try it. And really, the one thing I think we really just need to do, or I'd like to see, is that not only creating our own systems, but being able to be integrated into systems that are already happening, right? Increasing USDA. Well, as I say, this is not happening right now, but increasing FSA funding, farm credit services expansion, things that actually allow growers to go and get money and scale their business. I'm lucky to have a great relationship with my farm credit bank, and when I first started, didn't have any money. I had a year of a business plan, and I went to the Greenstone Farm Credit and said, "Hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I want to do," and they took pity on me and said, this could work, and gave me a chance. But up to that point, every bank I talked to turned me down. No one wanted to talk to me. This isn't buying land. This is just, no one wanted to talk to me, even loan me anything, only $20,000, but no one wanted to touch that because it's too small, it's not proven, whatever. But having those relationships and being able to create a system where farmers can feel comfortable walking into a farm credit bank and getting actual things they need, because things like the FSA, the Farm Service Agency, is failing farmers of all sorts, not just black and brown farmers. Just being able to tap in to this incredible network of state and federal monies that are flowing down currently to current farms to sustain them, to grow them. This is happening currently. It's not hidden, but overall, black farmers have, as we know, have been denied a lot of access to this capital. So just having a system where we could and grab onto this, and that doesn't even mean that's as simple as having people who are in your corner pushing for that. Like I said, at Greenstone, the farm credit bank I worked with, they took a risk, and they said, we're going to work with someone who's not proven, but that has an idea, it has passion, and that's the only way you're going to get folks who come from backgrounds without land, without capital, but have passions, is having those systems all in place. We raised money for the Black Farmers Fund, which we raised $100,000. Like Julia said, that's a down payment on land. We're talking $500,000 of development to develop a piece of property out. So it can't just be one-off things that we try to push people into the system. The system itself has to be changed, or not let's change it, it has to be supported by folks in the community. I think in the next 10 years, I'd just like to see the ability for small growers, primarily black growers, to tap into all the systems that are already in place, and then fight for our spot at the table.
I'm going to have you go first to the next question. I guess the second to last one. So farming is hard, if you haven't heard that already, or if you thought it was easy for some reason. It's hard work. It's fun, it's joyful, but it's hard. It's physical, it's emotional, it's deeply tied to history. From each of you all, what keeps you going and what gives you hope? I'm going to start with Kathy, or with Claire.
Claire. This is Claire. Claire says, honestly, I love it. The physical work, the slowness of it, the way it connects me to the rhythm of the earth, it doesn't feel like work to me. There's nothing like seeing the results of your labor, knowing you played a part in bringing something to life.
Besides just the utter thrill of farming and trying to beat nature and beat the market and stay in game, that's the high that you ride off mainly. But moments like this are what really keep me going. How many other professions or careers, after a hard day of work, come and spend time with these people and talk to you, and it's the people, the interactions, that ability to hang out or the interact with people is what really lifts me up every day. I usually come across a pretty happy person, but I'm happy because I'm around other people now. I'm happy to some interaction. I had the worst day possible, the worst day, and then I stopped by to pick up my my strawberries from my strawberry guy, and we talked for an hour and a half. We shouldn't. I should keep on driving, but just that little time there, like that touch of grass, human moments are what really keep me going, and being able to maintain those personal relationships with other farmers is, I think, just healthy, and especially when it's so easy to ostracize yourself and to go in your own corner and be alone. Just being able to interact with people, and it kind of forces you to interact, right? Like, I need to go buy sweet corn from this farm. If our relationship is bad and things are going poorly, then it's going to be hard to get my job done. So it kind of like helps you like work your mind a little bit and you trick yourself. Like, I'm okay. I can talk to this person. We'll be fine. So yeah, those human interactions really fuels me, and then just like the thrill of getting to market and getting crops to market, and when you show up and people get the box of produce and it's perfect, it's everything they wanted, and they go, wow, you're doing so good, but they don't see all the dirtiness, they don't see all the hard work and all of that, but like it feels good in that moment just to have that appreciation for that product. So that really, I think, fuels me at the end of the day.
I think the thing that keeps me going, there's lots of things that keep me going, fortunately. One of the things that keep me going is my adorable 6-year-old grandson, who I want to create these spaces and who I want to for him to see his poppy in spaces that are safe and modeled in a way where it kind of drives him down a good path and a good trajectory. I remember him coming out to our farm when he was only 2 years old, maybe 2.5 years old. I think I've told this story. Tess, you may know the story. 2.5 years old, he comes out there to our farm, and his mom and dad brings him out there, and he's got, he's running around. He's got on these nice gym shoes, and his mom is like, oh, I don't want his gym shoes to get dirty. So I think his dad was intuitive enough to, just simply take his gym shoes off, right? Just take the gym shoes off and take his socks off, and so he's running around out there at the farm, and some of the vegetable beds that we had planted, and he knew, even at that age, like at 2.5, maybe 3, he knew not to eat the jalapeno pepper, right? Like he would pull a piece of kale or a piece of collard green, he would put that in his mouth, but he wouldn't try to do anything with the jalapeno pepper. So anyway, he's running around. Some of the vegetable beds don't have vegetables in them, and it's just that really rich soil, and he's running around in that rich soil barefoot, and he's got this organic apple though in one hand, and I'm just watching him run around with this organic apple and bare feet in this rich soil, and it was shortly after the time of Eric Gardner getting murdered. I Can't Breathe, that sort of thing, and it made me have this profound sense that my job in his life is to make sure that this adorable little kid at the time with this organic apple running around barefoot with his feet in the soil never has to utter the words, I can't breathe, right? That sort of thing. And so that's one of the things that drives me. And as we're leaving the farm, as we're leaving, like me and his dad, we're walking out, and his dad's on one side of me, and he's on this side of me, but he's on the side of me where his feet's still in the soil, like he can't keep his feet not in that soil. And he's holding my finger, and me and his dad's talking, and he says, soil, right? He's barely 3 maybe, and he doesn't say dirt or anything like that. He says soil, right? And I'm like, he knows how to wrap me around his finger already. This don't even make no sense, right? So that's one of the things that drive me. The other thing that drives me is that I'm a firm believer, even to this day, I mentioned it earlier, that I'm just a vessel in whatever this movement is. And my job, my only job really, is to lean into it and not mess it up. And along the way, I get an opportunity to meet some incredibly beautiful, passionate, concerned, caring, humane people. And those connections and relationships is another thing that keeps me going. For example, Tess has been connected to our work for several years. Tess will come out there, get her hands in the soil, right alongside our interns. Her passion is pulling quack grass. So Tess has a passion for pulling weeds and stuff like, and I do too, right? Like Tess and I spend hours out there at the farm, just simply pulling weeds. But Tess will do that, and she'll show up on harvest days, and she'll bring homemade rolls and tea, and just like the whole setup with the tablecloth and the kerosene pot heater thing, and like all these delicious fresh baked goods, and like that's heart-wrenching to me, right? Like that's human spirit at its finest and its purest, as far as I'm concerned. And so I get an opportunity to cross paths with that part of humanity, and so those are some of the things that keep me going, because left up to me, my couch potato dream is to just sit at home with the blinds closed, making pancakes and watching ESPN, right? So like I need all of these connections to pull me away from that. So those are the things that keep me going.
All right, thank you. Got me hungry for pancakes. It is harder to go at the end, I'm learning, because I was like, I'm going to say this, and then Alex said it, and I'm going to say this about my daughter, and then you said it. But, I'll share a story that I often share about what inspires me, what gives me hope to continue to do the work that we do. We have a really phenomenal team, and it's great. It's just great to be a part of this community, to be a part of the community of growers, which I talk about as a lot of different groups of people in our community. One of the programs that we do at Growing Hope, one of our oldest programs, is our teen leadership program. We've been doing it for 20 plus years now. And remember, so Growing Hope is much older than me. Unlike these two, I've not been with my business or organization for its entire existence. But a couple of years ago, I got a phone call from a young man who is he's like my peer. So he's a little bit younger than me. He's a fully grown adult now. He was in the teen program when he was a kid. And he was telling me all about his experience. And turns out so Growing Hope, we have an 1.5-acre farm on Michigan Avenue. The building that we're in used to be a residential building. He was like, yeah, actually, I grew up in that house. And I was like, wait, which room was your bedroom? And he described it to me. I was like, I think I'm talking to you from your childhood bedroom right now. And so we kept talking and got along. And, we get so many phone calls, especially springtime, people who want soil, people who want seeds, whatever, because, the sun comes out and people are excited to grow food. And so I just happened to pick up the phone and happened to decide to talk to this person who I never met. And eventually I'm like, you should just come in and we should chat. So we're talking. And eventually, I'm like, why did you decide to just pick up the phone, talk to this random stranger you've never met? You don't know anything about me other than the fact that I work at this place that you worked at when you were a kid. You've now given me 4 hours of your time telling me all these stories. Why? And said, you know what? He responded. He was like, you know what, Julius? Because of my time at Growing Hope, I know that I'm never going to go hungry. And now I'm teaching all of those skills to my son. And that, it just over and over again to me, there's so much that can be measured and is great, how much produce we're growing, how much is getting out to people, how many participants we have. But that is not being measured, but that is intrinsically why we're showing up every day. It's not just about giving somebody food today. It's about investing in generational health, investing in truly food sovereign community, and getting to be a part of that story, and also knowing probably 90% of the time, I'm never going to hear the end of, like, I'm never going to know the end of that story. But for that 1% of, or 10% of the time where somebody comes back and shares it, or I get to see a glimpse as they like go off to college and start like interacting with their peers and advocating for themselves and one another, that just like every single day gives me hope. If you're ever at the Ypsilanti Farmers Market, he also DJs now at the market, so he's a hoot. I want to transition into a little bit of time for questions from the audience. As we're doing that transition, I want to like preempt a question that I'm feeling, and was a little bit of my hesitation for one of the questions that we asked earlier. So I said I was going to come back to it, but not tie a bow in it, but to go back to a little bit of like what Alex was sharing, what all of us shared. I wish that I could say that those are unique experiences. But I've heard those types of stories from black farmers throughout our state. Just as I have been harassed by the police in every city that I've lived on, including on the farm that I work on right now. And I say that to tie into, there's obviously this like, I don't want it to feel like a white elephant of like, who knows what's happening with our political system right now? Who knows where that funding is at or where it's going? What I do know from talking, again, with farmers of color throughout the entire state of Michigan, talking with farmers in general, there's a huge loss. Michigan is the second most diverse agriculture state in the country, behind California. So there are a lot of farmers feeling all of the cuts in some very, very, very real ways. And it's to the point, to me, where like, yes, as a nonprofit, we have funding. It is in limbo. We might get it cut, but like the amount of farmers who are feeling that and what that is potentially going to mean for our food system is like really what takes up a lot of my brain space. Specifically for black farmers, I've talked, again, for black farmers throughout our entire state about this, and over and over and over again, I hear stories about their funding being cut. I've heard stories about funding from programs being cut from black farmers, and knowing farmers who are not black under the same program whose programs have not been cut. They, across the board, do not want to share their story, do not want their names to be known, do not want their farms to be known for fear of retaliation. Another thing that's weighing on my heart is, we started the Black Farmers Fund for, this reason, for thinking about reparations. And knowing the history of our country's government, of the USDA's inequitable funding for black farmers. And it's like there's been this movement from the Black Farmers Funds, from changes in policies at the USDA, from other sorts of pieces of solidarity movements throughout the country, that I feel like has been like, the analogy of like, you build trust by putting marbles in a jar. So I feel like there's been marbles being put in the jar, slowly, but they've been put in the jar. It feels like the jar is now empty. And I don't know what is going to repair that, because it has been generations of putting marbles in a jar to get people to feel comfortable showing up at a government office. Even as we were working at the Black Farmers Fund, trying to get people to participate in us giving them money. I mean, Alex has shared the story many times of he's just like talked to people and said like, just fill this form out and we're going to give you money. Like, we're not the government, we're just like, we raise money, we want to give it to you. And even with that, there was hesitation. There was like, let's see how that goes this first time. I just wanted to preempt that because I'm sure it's on folks' minds. It's on my mind every single day, and don't want to like underscore the importance or the effects of funding cuts to black farmers, to our food system, but also want to hear all of your other questions.
I'd like to give you all a round of applause before we start taking questions. Thank you. Thank you for really sharing some personal stories and very compelling. I appreciate it. So, does anyone have a question? If so, raise your hand. Super.
This is heartfelt. I'm so discouraged when I think about the next generation of young people who really want to be farmers, and the path just seems impossible to me. I mean, I just don't see how this could happen. So I would appreciate some thoughts that you might have about encouraging young people, or maybe not encouraging them. Just encourage them to not give up and to pursue this path of being a farmer. Because I do think it's a calling. And if you hear that call and you want to do it, but anyway, as I say, it just seems impossible to me that people can do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. The barrier to entry is so high. But I think now in my 13th season, I've started to maybe reframe the way I think about involved in the food system, where it's if you're not farming, if you can't start a farm, work in farming nonprofits. If you can't do that, volunteer on a farm. If you can't volunteer on a farm, work on anything you can do to get closer, closer to the fire, inching. And if you can if you want to be a farmer, the only way you're going to get there is being in the community, is being involved in the local food scene, which takes a ton of work. It's extremely hard to do, but at this point now, I wouldn't tell someone, hey, go be a farmer. I would say, go work in food for 20 years, and then after you save some money up, then try and start a farm. Because I'm very hard-headed, and I don't mean that in a good way. I was 18, I thought I knew everything, and I said, I'm gonna do this. And I've sacrificed everything in my life. I don't mean that in a good way. It's not ruined my life, but it's definitely put my life in a different path, where my friends are, going to spring break and having fun, and you're donating plasma and hoeing a field, right? So it's a much different lifestyle that I think now that if I was talking to I don't have children, but my future children maybe, if I was telling them they want to be farmers, I'd be like, hey, listen, take your years in college, go do food corps, then from there, go work as a farmhand for 4 years. I've been a farmhand for 4 years. Volunteer at this. Build up your CV. Because really, the idea of being well, graduate high school, I guess I'll be a farmer. Or it's not a default anymore. It's something you have to you have to work at constantly just to even get access to the opportunity. So I tell folks, if you want to get involved in farming, first get involved in food, in your local food community. And once you have that establishment, I'll give you an example of this. When I was trying to find farmland, I moved my farm every year for five years in a row. We did a lease, the people would break the lease. Did a lease, they'd break the lease, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not going to sue them. It would take every dollar I had in order to get to court to be what was it going to do. And the moment I put myself out there, making connections, meeting other growers, get deeper and deeper and deeper into the industry, land opens up. There's land out there. There's land available. There's thousands of acres available. It's all out there. But you just have to be in this system long enough in order for those opportunities to come up. Because now, I get offers for land, every other week. It's someone saying, oh, I got 10 years, I got 100. Everyone wants to give you land once you have something. Everyone wants to get you in there. So I tell people, you just got to be around long enough so that when the opportunity comes up, that you can be there. And besides changing systems, that's really all you can do is just as I said, be at the table. And do talks like this, I'll meet somebody who have opportunity from there. It's how I met Melvin. I met Julius. Just opportunity to talking to people. They know people, and so if you tell them just get involved, it's not fun. It's not fun to say, hey, go work 5 years weeding, and do all this other work, because being the farmer is the superstar part. It's not that's the peak part. You're in charge. I'm the boss. You do what I say. But we all want to go from being level 1 to the boss, right? But really, it takes a lot of years, and I spent probably a decade of my time working towards that. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but I to tell people if that's what you want, you have to understand the sacrifice.
Hi, I also want to say thanks so much for coming and sharing your evening with us. I guess my question is, I know you've mentioned the importance of like the dollar and spending money. Is there any other way, or like specifically, what are the best ways, like the CSA, farmers market, how to kind of make the most bang for our buck, and also ways for advocacy in order to help sustain people trying to survive the like next 4 years or so? Is there anything like more that we can be doing to kind of help shelter, sustain, or support Black farmers and other people who are going to be more affected than everybody else?
What's the first part? Can you say the first part of your question? Remember that?
I don't know. I kind of black out when I'm trying to like bang
yes,
for your
I got
buck.
it.
Like, what's the
Yeah.
most effective way I make my dollar go the furthest to help support you guys?
Yeah. I go back to supporting farmers right where they're at. And if you want to get the most bang for your buck, get as close to the farmer as possible. So if you can choose between buying it in a grocery store versus buying it from a CSA versus buying it directly from them, like whatever the closest is, that's going to like cut out their margins, because every time it changes hands, that changes the amount of places that the money is going through. As close as you can get to them, do that. And then the advocacy piece, I think I'd put alongside that. I'm imagining there's going to be lots of opportunities and things to advocate for over the next 4 years plus, based on the number of things that there's been to advocate for or against in the past 3 months. I'd say like there's lots of organizations that put out regular sort of blasts. I think the National Young Farmers Coalition does a really good job of keeping people up to date. You could also follow along with Washtenaw County Food Policy Council and the information they put out if you want to get more involved in a very local level, more hyper-local level. But a part of it, a part of the advocacy is just like showing up and getting to know the people who represent you, who represent us, and being that voice so that it's not, like I've been to Lansing 4 times this year, which is more than I'm normally there. And so at this point, the people who represent me, like I walk in their office and like they know who I am, they know what I'm there for. We still have the conversation, and I still think it's worth my time. But every time that I am with other people who are interested, I say find out who your representatives are. It doesn't mean that you have to go to Lansing. All of our representatives do coffee hours within our districts, and all of them should be and want to be listening to us and hearing the stories and hearing when there's one piece when it's coming from me or when it's coming from Melvin or from Alex who this is our job, and it impacts us in whatever ways that it does. But as we activate more folks from the community to show up at those things and to voice their concerns and their opinions, to be active participants, I think that is just what they listen to the most.
Question? Anyone? We've got one.
I have a more light question. What is your favorite thing to grow, and what is the most satisfying thing when it's done, if that's different?
I love pole beans. It's my favorite thing to grow. It's so much fun to watch something grow so tall, and then just pull them off feels good. It's something we're mainly a lettuce farm, but it's not satisfying. Lettuce, it's throw it in there. But the beans, that feels I don't know, that feels substantial. And it's always really fun.
That's a great question. I feel for me it's jalapeno peppers. We grow some incredible jalapeno peppers at our farm, and it's just something about I'm not a forager, but it makes me feel like when we're harvesting jalapeno peppers, because you got to look through the leaves and reach in there and grab the peppers. That feels really satisfying to me. I'm not a spicy food eater, but I really enjoy growing and harvesting jalapeno peppers.
Again, I'm not a farmer, and my answer is going to show you that. I like growing something new every single year. If you're trying to farm and make money, don't do that. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed, we did it both at Growing Hope, and I tried it at my house with less success, is turmeric. And we grew it in one of our hoop houses. And I mean, I love turmeric in a lot of different ways. But just if you've never seen a turmeric plant, it looks kind of like a palm, like a big palm frond that comes straight up from the ground. And ours got to be like, I don't know, they were taller than me, so 6+ feet. And I heard some oh wows, and that is just like how people entered our hoop house every single time. It didn't matter what age they were. It didn't matter their experience really with farming. They were like, oh, that's turmeric? And I'm like, yeah, and actually you can eat the leaf. You can make tea with it, but you can also just taste it right now. And that's like a fun thing, like going back to like Melvin's story with his grandson. Like that's a fun thing to be able to share with people of just like, you know, like how many people have eaten the leaf of a turmeric plant? I never had before 2 years ago. And there's just so many things like that. It's fun to get to introduce people to.
Good question. Any other questions? Well, I would like to reiterate how pleased I am with how you shared your stories and to have everyone here. People that are watching online, thank you so much. And we wish you all the luck. And we know where to buy our not at the grocery store. No, we don't do that. Go to the farm. So anyway, thanks a lot for everyone.